Attorney General, great to have you here tonight. What a seismic 2 weeks this has been in British politics. I have to say, first off, congratulations on your campaign. I think you would have been a great Prime Minister, but given the process has been so truncated, you didn't really get a chance, did you, to show what you were offering the country?
Well, thank you for your kind words. I very much enjoyed putting my name forward, arguing my case to colleagues and the country. And whilst, of course, I'm disappointed with the result, I have no regrets whatsoever about standing on a very clearly defined policy platform that was presented to members in a professional way. And I was really grateful for the support that I got from the team, people who nominated me, the people who campaigned for me, those friendly colleagues who actually voted for me, and actually just blown away by the very high levels of goodwill that I got from my colleagues, even if they didn't vote for me.
Now, you were the Spartan Brexiteer in the process, and almost immediately after being eliminated, you swung your support behind Liz Truss, which was very significant in this process. Of course, Liz has absolutely become a proponent of Brexit, but she didn't vote for Brexit. So that endorsement from you really was a signal to the Brexiteers in your party that we can trust Truss when it comes to Brexit. Why do you have that faith in her, given that she voted Remain?
I've worked closely with Liz during her time as Foreign Secretary principally, but also when she was International Trade Secretary. And I've seen close up that she is very much committed to delivering on the Brexit opportunities. She is wholeheartedly committed and devoted to resolving the issues relating to Northern Ireland. And I've really seen that she's a big champion for Brexit. So for me, her actions and what she's done in government and how she's used her roles in government have persuaded me that she is the strongest advocate for Brexit on offer.
Have you been offered a cabinet post in her administration?
I don't think Liz is offering cabinet posts to people, and that's my understanding. So no such discussions have taken place.
Of course, it's looking increasingly likely that it will be a Truss versus Sunak runoff, but we don't know. So I want to talk about all three candidates, of course, because the MPs still have Penny Mordaunt in the mix as well. Now, Ms Mordaunt was the early favourite amongst the members, but over the past week there's been real scrutiny, especially when it comes to her positioning and her actuality, I guess, when it comes to trans ideology and the rights of women. You, of course, have been a real proponent for that, especially because you've been at the coalface in terms of your maternity leave and needing to protect your job in that position. Your experience is that Penny Mordaunt didn't want to protect the rights of the women of women in legislation. Is that correct?
My experience was relating to Penny's stewardship of the Ministerial and Other Maternity Allowances Bill, which was introduced by government for my benefit at the time because I had a baby. I was a
and you needed maternity leave as Attorney General, and under the law you couldn't get that at the time.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
It was crazy. It was an anomaly of our system that just by virtue of having a baby I would have had to resign from my job. And I have to say, to his credit, the Prime Minister was absolutely 100% supportive of someone in his top team having a baby, no questions asked, and he was 100% behind me and supporting me to have some time with my newborn and also come back to my job. And I'll always be grateful to him for his support. But it required legislation. Penny Mordaunt was the Bill Minister taking the bill through Parliament. And what happened was, in the bill, it referred to me as a pregnant person. That's gender neutral language, that's the civil service preferred terminology to use in those circumstances, so they said. And that was quite, I took it, I actually was personally quite offended by it. I thought, I'm a pregnant woman and I think that should be honoured in the legislation.
And she was responsible for that?
Well, there was a lot of opposition to that wording by Conservative backbenchers, Lords, cross-party Lords, actually, and the record shows very clearly, I mean, it's indisputable what Penny's position was, and that was that she opposed changing the language for various reasons.
So she wanted pregnant person to remain in the bill.
That is what the record shows. And if you look at the Hansard of late February, early March 2021, you will see very clearly what Penny Mordaunt's position was. And she resisted any changes to the wording.
So she's woke, right?
I have to make clear, I have no gripe with Penny. Penny is my
your
friend.
neighbouring MP.
She's my neighbouring MP, and I think she's a formidable lady, a great talent. I did disagree with the position she took on the wording in that legislation. I know many colleagues did in Parliament. I disagree with her take on
can you understand
gender
why
ideology.
This matters to members? Because given the force of this new cultural wave of wokeism that has taken over so many institutions in our country, it's important that we have a Prime Minister that doesn't sign up to this ideology, isn't it?
In my view, it is. I think I do see Penny as the woke candidate, informed by the position she took last year on that bill. I think it was a no-brainer, actually, to change the wording to woman, and I don't think there was any legal or drafting reason why it couldn't have been done, personally. I do think I don't think it's our number one issue in the country. I don't think it's going to be determinative of this leadership campaign. I think the cost of living challenges facing millions of families around the country, I think our approach on the economy are much more pressing issues and defining issues, actually, for politics today.
But it's indicative of a way of thinking.
But I do have quite strong feelings on this issue of, the cultural attitudes which are seeping into our public and private institutions. It relates to gender ideology. I'm quite concerned about the spread of a particular politicised ideology in our schools. The approach taken to single-sex spaces, the approach taken to single-sex sports. I'm traditionalist, you could say. I
believe
Liz
Truss has stood up for the rights of women, hasn't she?
That's my experience of Liz. She gave a speech. It was quite controversial at the time. I think it was end of 2020. She gave a speech setting out her very clear views on gender and race and equalities generally in our country. And I think it was a very common sense approach. It was very much about fairness, meritocracy, equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome, much more in favour of the former rather than the latter. And I think looking at people on the content of their character rather than on their personal characteristics, skin colour or gender.
So that's Mordaunt. I want to talk about Rishi Sunak, because at the moment all of the polls of the members shows both Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss thrashing Rishi Sunak in the runoff. A lot of that, Suella, is because of the perceived disloyalty of the former Chancellor towards the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Now, I spoke to Nadine Dorries on this show last week, and she said that for many months the Chancellor was not committed to his work because he was plotting behind the scenes to depose Boris Johnson. Was that your experience, and can you understand why there is now so much reluctance to back Rishi Sunak, who's viewed as a backstabber?
I've got to say, I don't know about those kind of stories. I personally would not have resigned. Rishi was in a very different position to me. He was, he set it out in his resignation letter. I disagree with his decision to resign, but ultimately it's a personal decision. I don't know how that will be viewed by the members, to be honest. I mean, my personal views, I feel a very great sense of loyalty to Boris Johnson, and I do think it's I have a great sadness that it's come to an end in the way that it has, because I think he achieved huge amounts for our country. He's been an election winner. He's got an unassailable record when it comes to elections, and I think there was a lot more for him to do, not just for our country but for the world. So, and I think there's a lot of that goodwill towards him in the country. I certainly see in my constituency and amongst our membership. So that may well influence the vote, but who knows? I'm never going. It's a very brave person who tries to anticipate the results of an election.
How was his final cabinet meeting today, and what was the mood like?
Well, in characteristic Boris Johnson style, it was upbeat, jovial, focused on the issues that really matter, i.e. the British people, and delivery of policy. That's his passion. I won't lie, I shed a tear. You know, a gift was presented to the Prime Minister on behalf of the Cabinet. No, he's very pragmatic and, you know, magnanimous and reflective on the situation. I think at the end of the day, he is still Prime Minister. There is still a job of governing to do. You know, I've been in several other meetings with him on other subjects. You know, there are big decisions still that require focus and executive application. So he is actually focused on the day job.
Just finally, Suella, you're obviously one of the main surrogates now for Liz Truss. I just want to ask you 3 quick-fire questions about her policy positions, which are very important to our viewers.
Yes.
Is she committed to leave the European Court of Human Rights?
Well, Liz has told me that she will do whatever it takes to solve the small boats problem. And, you know, if that requires leaving the European Convention of Human Rights, then so be it, yes.
I've been told that she is opposed to further COVID lockdowns. Is that your understanding? That's
a good question. I mean, that's quite hypothetical, and hopefully we're never presented with such a question again. But from my experience of Liz and her views that she's taken in the past, that does sound very much like the Liz I know.
And what about immigration?
Again, I think she takes a pragmatic approach. I think that generally she would want us to get control over illegal migration. I think she's taking a very robust approach, which is why I feel I can lend her my support in these circumstances. But, you know, I think she also acknowledges that we have labour market shortages and we need to, first of all, try and incentivise the British workforce to fill those gaps. But there may well be an economic need for migration.
Will she sell Channel 4 and abolish the BBC licence fee?
Again, I think Liz is quite clear on that. She wants to deliver our 2019 manifestos. And as that is, if I remember correctly, contained in our manifesto, I think it's definitely going to be delivered under Liz.
Attorney General Suella Braverman, so good to have you tonight.
Likewise, thank you.